and welcome to WNBA Courtside. We are back. The Olympics have come and gone, and the crew's all back. Nthabiseng, Kaunda, myself, Cyrus. Good to be with you. We're going to go straight into some of the topics we want to cover this week on this episode. I can't believe, Nthabiseng, good to have you back, by the way, that we're already at the point where these kind of graphics have to be made. Playoff spots are being clinched. We've got this, number one seed at the moment. You got the Connecticut Sun, then you got the Las Vegas Aces, and then you got, the reigning champions, the Seattle Storm. They've booked their spots in the playoffs. It sort of seems that this has been the way it's been going all season long. With, we initially started this with, it's the Storm or the Aces, and then the Sun have just sort of popped up from nowhere. They're shining. See what I did there?
The cheese.
The cheese. I think I don't know about you guys, but if Lee was here, she would concur that we kind of saw the Suns as a possibility. They were not completely written off from clinching the playoff spot because we knew there's some couple of players that were coming back from injuries and things like that. And with them being healthy, then they were definitely going to make the playoff spot. I don't think it's a surprise that these guys are there. They've been outperforming the whole season. So I'm really happy that they're there. It will make an interesting playoff run to see who's actually going to make it through to the championship. Now with the Seattle Storm, I really like the Seattle Storm, but sometimes, man, they give me a headache.
Look at the top you're wearing before you talk smack about the Storm, though. Just saying,
I know, but there's some games that they lost where I was like, bruh, what is going on here? When they lost to New York and then they came back, and other games where I just thought you guys just blew this for no reason. But I'm just happy that they're there. And my Aces, of course, we cannot forget my Aces. Listen, I'm still an Aces fan at heart, as much as I do love the Seattle Storm.
Yeah, well, look, I think you've always said that, and I think we both sort of said this could be the year, with Liz Cambage back, but it just hasn't quite been them at their very best all the way through. Kaunda, we've spoken about the Storm in a way, and I think one of the other things that is a bit of a topic is this almost like Olympics fatigue? Because when you look at the Seattle Storm, their big three were in Tokyo. And yes, Jewel Lloyd came back and was just balling out of control, putting up some serious numbers. But at some point, you also feel like they've hit a wall in a way. And maybe this is where we need to see the likes of Jordan Canada, Mercedes Russell really starting to lift the team a lot more. Do you think that that's sort of what's led to potentially maybe the Storm taking a bit of a knock recently and maybe the Aces not being as good as they could be? And that's what the Sun are capitalizing on.
Look, Cyrus, first of all, to go to the Seattle Storm, right? In my humble opinion, I think they could be
humble as always.
They could be a bit of Olympic fatigue. I mean, when you got the top three, you got Sue Bird, you got Jewel Lloyd, and you got Brianna Stewart, all playing on Team US. They traveled to Tokyo, balled their socks off, got the medal, came back, and then took the Commissioner's Cup.
Yep.
So Cyrus, they've been doing a lot of heavy lifting. I mean, it's not child's play, and it will catch up with you. So I've got two theories on this. It could be genuine Olympics fatigue, but at the same time, it could be like, guys, we have been balling quite a bit. Let's pace ourselves. So don't go there 110% like you do as usual. Maybe drop it to 90 because we've got a playoffs berth to take care of here. So I think we've seen it sometimes with teams where they peak too early and then the steam runs out towards the end of the postseason and then they lose what could have been a glorious postseason run. And I think potentially what the Storm is doing is pacing themselves because they have been, some of their key players have been doing quite a lot of work. Plus, taking part in the Commissioner's Cup was no small feat, right? Now, when we look at the Las Vegas Aces, Nthabiseng's Las Vegas Aces, love them to Della Reese's pieces, but that lack of perimeter game for me is always going to be a problem. Yeah. It's always going to be a problem. The new basketball right now, WNBA, NBA, even FIBA to a certain extent, Euro basket, Afro basket, you name it. The three is a thing. It's become a thing. Thank goodness to one of the basketball gods, Steph Curry. The three has become a thing. And you can see in the WNBA everywhere. If you can't get your perimeter right, whether defensively or offensively, which I think the Las Vegas Aces have been struggling with, you're gonna struggle. I'm actually impressed they've made it into the postseason. Liz is balling, Asia's balling, but Cyrus, I think when other teams turn it up a notch, it could be a struggle for them. And Nthabiseng.
Wow. I mean, I think you're right with them missing out on the perimeter game. But what Bill Laimbeer has been able to do is capitalize on the fact that they don't really have those people that can shoot the threes, right? And so you have to use the kind of the strengths that your team has. And the reason why they got to the position that they are in is because, yes, they recognize that they're missing out on something. So then let's drive, let's kill them with our inside game. And I think that perimeter game is just the cherry on top that they can aspire to get to. But I hear you, but I still think that they can do what they can do with the game that they have.
I'm going to say something, right? Because I kind of agree with Kaunda here. Then I started looking at the stats. And I'm like, well, if you look at it, 3-point percentage, the Aces are fourth in the WNBA. They're shooting a 36.6 3-point percentage. The highest 3-point percentage in the dub is 38.7, held by the Seattle Storm. But then when you look at 3-pointers made, you then realize that the Seattle Storm are making like 9 3-pointers a game, and the Aces are making 4.9. So, it really goes to prove the point that 3-point shooting is just not what the Aces focus on. And then when you start looking at sort of points in the paint, and we'll get to those kind of things, you can see that's what the game is based on. And especially when you're looking at like Liz Cambage being such a threat anywhere near the basket, and then A'ja Wilson being an absolute demon from mid-range. So I think that's where the Aces really make the most of their money. However, it also comes down to what's happening with the Connecticut Sun. And I think that what's interesting about them as a team is they've done really well this season. They've done things like getting to the Commissioner's Cup final, the first one ever, but losing to the Storm in that game. And they didn't really have, like, their big player, Jonquel Jones, sat out the Olympics because she plays for Bosnia. They weren't there. So, it wasn't a thing. And they should have been a lot more rested, but perhaps it was also, rust from having so much time off to then trying to play this big game, whereas the Storm players were like, the only thing that's keeping me from doing anything is just being tired because I was on a plane, which is a real thing, of course. But you can almost see that momentum is what carried the Storm through the Commissioner's Cup game, and sort of petered out a little bit. I want to talk though a little bit about some of the other teams who are knocking on the door, because yes, those top three teams have clinched their spots in the playoffs, but the most important thing is trying to get that number 1 and number 2 seed, because it gives you the double bye. And the teams that are right behind those guys are the Minnesota Lynx, the Phoenix Mercury, and the Chicago Sky, basically, because I think they're the closest of them that are sort of challenging the top three, with the Lynx being a couple of games back from the number 1 and number 2 seeds. So if you look at the Lynx, and I've been talking about them a lot this season as sort of a dark horse because I love Nafisa Collier, but if there's one woman you just cannot count out, it is this lady right here. Sylvia Fowles has been incredible, and her stats in the game against the Storm when they beat them: 29 points, 20 rebounds, 4 steals, 4 blocks. She did absolutely everything. Nthabiseng, do you think that with performances like that from Sylvia Fowles, and the likes of Nafisa Collier and a couple of other players that are on that Lynx team, that they could actually be a sort of outside bet for a run at potentially trying to win the championship?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't quite have an answer to that, a solid answer to say they will make it into the position that they are competing for a championship. But when we're talking about a playoff spot, it's a potential because Sylvia has been just out of control, and Nafisa has also been playing really well. But I also think they're still missing a couple of key pieces that will get them to a position where they're really competing for a spot.
No, I mean, I agree with you when it comes to championship pedigree, because in essence, you got to have, really dominant performances from a lot of players in different positions. And right now, you've got Fee and Sil being the main real contributors in those teams. And then you're starting to wonder where it's going to come from the other players. Look, they've got some really, really good players on their team. If I remember correctly, Kayla McBride is at the Lynx at the moment, and her game is just fantastic. So she could potentially try and add a little bit more to the Lynx going forward. But I think a playoff spot is pretty much locked for them. I mean, when you look at just how well they're playing, they'd have to go on an absolute disaster class of a run of games in order to lose out on making the playoffs. But
look, Cyrus, sorry to jump in. I agree with you, and I definitely agree with Nthabiseng. They're doing well, but a championship run, I think, is still a ways away, because they're a team to me that looks like they're in a rebuild process and they're trying to still figure themselves out. I mean, gone are the days when they had Sylvia Fowles, Lindsay Whalen, Maya Moore, and Simone Augustus, like where they just had this force that just came at you and was ready to lift that championship trophy. But the good thing about the Lynx is that they have a lot of young talent there that's ready to take it to that next level. Maybe not this season, maybe the season after this one and the season after that. I can see them trying to come back and become that championship team that we were used to so many seasons ago. But I think they're even internally, I think they should be content with just a nice playoffs berth this time around and getting that postseason experience into the younger guys. And I think that should be good enough for the Lynx this time around, yeah?
And I guess that's what they've really built themselves on, because Coach Cheryl Reeve, that's what she does. She manages to make her players a little better and build with the pieces that they have. I mean, yes, they do not have Maya Moore, and that's really one of the key things. They just don't have a real mega star outside of Sylvia Fowles, who's just incredible. But she's getting up there in terms of her time on the planet. Don't want to use the A word. Okay, age. But I think the thing is that's what happens with players in any professional sense. At some point you're still able to pull out some really big games, but then you need to do that consistently if you want to win a championship, and that just doesn't seem to be the way forward. Let's end the show here with a couple of really interesting topics, though, because we're talking about the teams that have clinched. I think one of the most important battles is that last spot, that 8th spot, to see who can actually make it into the playoffs. And you've got a couple of teams that are in a dogfight. You've got the New York Liberty, the Dallas Wings, the LA Sparks, and the Washington Mystics, who are really, really close. I mean, there's only like half a game separating them from each other. And that could be a really heartbreaking situation come the end of the season, because I think that a lot of teams there'll be a few of them that will be really sad they didn't make it. But the reason I bring that up is, Nthabiseng, the Washington Mystics have welcomed back none other than two-time MVP champion Elena Delle Donne. And she's pretty good since she's come back, She had I think it was 16 points in her first game, 18 points in her second game. So, her and Tina Charles could do some things.
Yeah, I think they both have something to prove, especially ADD coming back from an injury. I think her mind is in a place where she wants to bring her team to a place where they can possibly run for a championship game. And I mean, let's talk about the other lady. She's been insane all season, right?
Yeah.
And I think with them two coming together to make a run for not just a playoff spot, I honestly think they can make the playoffs. I truly, truly think with the type of talent that the Mystics have, with the two, they will possibly make the playoffs. Now, New York has been balling, and so is Dallas with the two young teams. Right. And so I give kudos to them for what they've done the entire season and how they continue to get better, right? But then when I think about veteranship and I think about how long these guys have been in a position to be in a place where they're fighting for a spot, we could see that the Mystics can possibly make it into it with ADD being back on the team.
But EDD is that kind of player. She's so dominant sometimes. And to your point, there are a lot of youngsters in that Dallas Wings team. And, we're not seeing like last season's Arika Gumbawale, who was just going insane with the scoring numbers. But potentially they could be the team that loses out, maybe because they don't have the experience that would be required. Kaunda, do you think that the Mystics could not just actually sneak into the playoffs, because I think that's a real possibility, but maybe ride the powers of this lady, here she is scoring on your team, Elena Delle Donne, to potentially even be one of those surprises in the WNBA playoffs? Because when you look at the way the playoffs are structured, there's a couple of single elimination games, and do you really want to be in a single elimination game with EDD on the one side, Tina Charles, backing her up, and you're just there like a deer in the headlights? I mean, could the Mystics do something?
First of all, that was EDD shooting over Tia Cooper, which is like me shooting over you, Cyrus, which is easy pickings. Like, really. Now, look, Elena Delle Donne. EDD has been here before, Cyrus. She's been to the postseason. She's won a championship. She knows what it takes. She knows, when to turn it on, when to turn it off. I think Tina Charles also is no stranger to this level of pressure. So I strongly believe, and I think if Lee was here, she would back me up. She's a Mystics fan, diehard Mystics fan. I strongly believe they're going to comfortably make it to the playoffs. They're going to get a playoff spot, but whether they'll push very far, I'm not sure. It depends on the supporting cast to Tina and Elena. Would that supporting cast really show up and take them to the second round or even further? I don't know, because at the top you've got juggernauts, especially the first three teams that have clinched those playoff spots. Those teams, Cyrus, they're on fire, and they've got an arsenals of notes. Arsenal of notes. And I'm not trying to do a soccer analogy here, because we know what's happening with that.
Please, let's not do that. Let's not do that.
Making a really good point here, Kaunda. Though I will say this about the supporting cast. The Mystics did pretty well last season when it came to the postseason. They just had injury problems. This season, they've welcomed back a lot of people. Maisha Hines-Allen is there. Ariel Atkins is still there. Obviously, Tina Charles has been going insane. Natasha Cloud's there. So I do think that if we're really looking at a team that could potentially scare a lot of teams and get victories where they might not necessarily been expected to, it could be them. Because teams like the Chicago Sky would really be thinking, okay, do I want to be matched up against Washington? And this could become ugly real quick.
Yep.
Because, with the superstars that Washington has, anything can happen. Just to close it off, do you think, Nthabiseng, that, and I'll ask this to you too, Kaunda, that Elena Delle Donne might be looking at the rest of the end of the season as being a sort of, let me get back to full fitness and then potentially try to make a push next season? Or do you think she's like, I'm here to play, let's see what happens?
As a player, I don't think we go into a situation thinking, okay, let me get fit and get ready for the next season. I totally think she's going to give it her all to even potentially try to get a championship, right? In preparation for next season, obviously, but I think she'll give it her all to put her team in the best position to. She's a leader. Yeah. She's got Tina Charles, she's got Ariel Atkins and Natasha Cloud and others.
Yeah.
So I don't think as a leader you're gonna go into a situation not trying to prove that you can get your team to where it needs to be. And so I think with that being said, she's going to push for the best position that she can put her team in.
Kaunda, agreement?
Cyrus, I'm just going to back up what Nthabiseng said, because she said everything right. I'll give you a hip-hop analogy. When was the last time you saw a battle between two MCs and the first one went, "I'm the second best rapper in the world"? You know, nobody goes into battle saying, second's I. You know, you go in there, and I think he's that kind of player who's like, I'm going to push it. And if it doesn't work, next season is still another opportunity. But I want it to work. And like I said before, she's been here before. So she can take it there. And I think that's the plan. It's part of the plan. She's not there to come up and get participation medals as participation trophies and things. No, she wants that trophy. And I think that's what it's all about. I think that the Mystics as a whole franchise, they fancy themselves lifting that trophy this season.
Look, I think you've also explained to us why we got to keep you on this show, because your analogies are Lethabo Nxumalo, who's been, giving us all of the punchlines every time she's on. We miss you, Lee. But that's where we're going to leave it, everybody. Thank you all for watching. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel. We love the WNBA, and we know you do too. Peeps, have a great one, and we'll see you again next time. This has been WNBA Courtside.